About 1,000 National Park Service employees have been laid off since the middle of February. What does this mean for national parks going forward? Plus, Axon might be looking to take their headquarters out of Arizona after a battle began with union members. Axon CEO responds. And how can small businesses better understand the legislative system? It's all that and more this evening on Broomhead. Welcome, I'm Mike Broomhead. Before we get into this evening's topics, let's talk about what's happened this week with the president. He spoke to the country from the Oval Office about the job cuts, about the economy, about the job numbers. Job numbers came in much better than January, but still below predictions. The president said that some of the chaos that we have seen on Wall Street was expected, but he has also eased some of the tension by putting a stay or a pause on the tariffs in Mexico and Canada. So with that pause until April 2nd, he believes it's going to give time for negotiations for businesses to settle in. There has been $3 trillion in committed investment into the U.S. since he took office. So what that means for the public is jobs will be coming. But what will happen in the meantime? Inflation is a big concern. We're going to wait and see what happens next. Coming up, in the middle of February, about 1,000 National Park Service employees were laid off. What does that mean for national park maintenance, and how might this affect your travel to the national parks going forward? We're talking with a former NPS employee next. It's important to recognize and thank the fine Arizona men and women who are serving in our country's military. One of the ways we like to do that is through a segment called From Arizona for America, brought to you by my good friends at Sanderson Ford. So join me in honoring Marine Corps Staff Sergeant Robert Tossing from Phoenix, Arizona, who is stationed at Camp Gilbert H. Johnson in North Carolina. For a list of more of our friends and neighbors that are from Arizona for America, just go to the news tab at cw7az.com. Welcome back. A lot of conversation about saving money, the Department of Government Efficiency, layoffs at the federal level, and many people think trimming the government is a good idea. But does it go too far in some areas? To talk about the National Park Service spending 41 years with that agency, Phil Francis joins us. Phil, thanks for doing this.
Well, thank you for having me. I really appreciate it.
National Park Services, we had talked about 20,000 employees, and now the layoffs, about 1,000 employees. What does this mean to that agency and the service that it gives?
Well, I think you have to look back in time a little bit in order to answer that question. If you go back to 2010, and if you look at the number of employees that have been lost since then, we've lost some 5,000 employees before these cuts. And since that time, and you go back in time a little bit, you'll find that the number of national parks has increased all the way up to 433. And so, but the budgets have remained the same. So the budget for the National Park Service is somewhere around $4 billion. Now we get $55 billion in return. What a great investment. But that $4 billion back in 2010, if you adjust it for inflation, and that seems to be a pretty hot word these days, would be about $4.6 billion today.
Okay.
But yet the Congress is proposing to give the National Park Service the same level of budget that existed way back in 2010. So to answer your question about numbers of people, we are losing thousands of employees at a time when we have over 325 million people visit each year and spend $50 billion plus in the local economies. So it affects the quality of the visitor experience. It affects the economic well-being of these local communities, these mom and pop stores, these big hotels. I mean, this is their lifeblood. So it makes zero sense to me to be reducing staff at a time when the National Park Service is the most loved agency in all of government, and when so many people are visiting, and when it's such an economic boost for all these states where parks are. And there's a national park in every state.
When you say that there have been losses in the past and you've been able to absorb the losses, Has this crossed a critical point in your mind where it is going to have permanent effects that the customers will see?
Yes, sir, for sure. I used to be superintendent of the most visited national park in the country, and that's the Blue Ridge Parkway. And so we would have 16 million people each year. Now, the Great Smoky Mountains National Park has about 12 million visits a year. But we had 14 visitor centers along the 469 miles. We went through 2 states and 29 counties. And all of those counties were dependent upon the economic well-being of the Blue Ridge Parkway. The hotels, motels, restaurants, gas stations, they were critically important. But since the time that I was there, they've lost half of their maintenance staff. Many of their visitor centers will be closed. And that's going to be the same thing is going to be true in national parks all around our country. There's no other way. We've used volunteers, we've used friends groups, we've raised money from all different kinds of sources, trying to compensate for budgets that are inadequate. I used to attend appropriation meetings in Washington just because I was interested. I would sit in the back of the room. And I'll never forget the chairman of the Appropriations Committee, and this is not a political statement. But the Appropriations Committee chair would ask the director, well, Mr. Director, do you have enough money? And they'd always say yes. And having worked at the parks where they were asking questions about it, it just wasn't true. And it's worse now. It's worse than it's ever been.
Well, I tell you, I appreciate your passion and knowledge on the topic. We reached out because it's such an important topic, being from the Grand Canyon State. So thank you for the wealth of information on this, and hopefully this is going to work out for the best for everyone. But thanks for your time.
Thank you very much for your interest.
All right, National Park Service, we have one of the biggest here. We have the Grand Canyon internationally visited. This is a big topic for us. We'll be back in just a moment. Coming up, understanding the legislative system, especially as a small business, can be tricky. The Greater Phoenix Chamber has a committee to help business owners make their voices heard. Find out how when Broomhead returns. All right, welcome back. Talking local economy and how you build a great economy. No one better to do it than the people at the Greater Phoenix Chamber. Mike Huckins joins us. Thanks for doing this.
Thanks for having me. Really appreciate it.
So let's talk the massive growth we've had here in the Valley. I've been here for 30 years. You've been here 40 plus.
Yep.
It doesn't happen by accident.
No.
There's a lot of planning that goes into, especially the big industry that's come here.
Yeah.
What role do you play in that at the Greater Phoenix Chamber?
Yeah, so our role in the overall economy of bringing businesses here is more, they have different organizations like GPEC, for example, that are responsible for bringing them here. But our goal at the Phoenix Chamber, once they're here, how do we make them succeed? How do we get them to stay here and expand their operations as we go?
So how much of that is legislative? How much of that is you kind of being the liaison and working with the city councils and the county board of supervisors to make sure it's a business-friendly environment?
Yeah, a lot of it is. As you know, Arizona has a great reputation and history of business-friendly regulations for the most part anyway. So our goal at the chamber is to make sure, as you said, those city council members, the policymakers at the state legislature, the county level, and even to some extent at the federal level, making sure they're passing and keeping in mind the most business-friendly policies that they can.
So when I had a small business, I was an electrical contractor, and the concerns were regulation, taxation, and infrastructure. Is that still the big three when it comes to what you guys are focused on?
I would say yes, and those three are very important. I would say now another one of the bigger obstacles for business is workforce. Finding workforce in any industry now that you look at is a challenge.
I'm a big supporter of the CTEDs.
Yes.
And I think for people that don't know, career technical education districts, trade schools is what we used to call them when we were kids. But for young people that are either going to go to college, but they want a skill to work their way through, or ones that are going to go right into the workforce, how invaluable are those to industry that's coming here to know that that workforce is coming out like that?
It's super valuable. We are big proponents at the Chamber of multiple pathways. Not every kid wants to go to college, or nor should they. Not every kid wants to go directly into a job. So whatever whatever path they choose to take, whether it be CTE, getting a credential, going into the trades, or pursuing a 4-year or even 2-year degree, we're supportive of it, and it's critically important. All aspects.
Yeah, I was, 18-year-old kid. I didn't go to college. I went to work, and when I found the trades, I should say the trades kind of found me.
Right.
I fell into a career that I absolutely loved and kept me employed for 25 years without a college degree.
Yeah.
And I was even a small business owner. So that pathway for some, it's an eye-opening experience for a young man or a young woman to realize there is a pathway for real success for me.
There really is. And sometimes it has this sort of connotation, I'm going to go be a plumber. There's a lot of money in plumbing and electrical. So these kids, just sort of the education of getting them to know about those pathways and what opportunities are out there is great.
So what would you say to a startup or a small business that's just relocated here to the greater Phoenix area? How can you help them? What do they need to know? And what do you think they should do first?
Selfishly, I'd say get involved with the Chamber or another organization that you feel passionate about. Obviously, the Chamber is a business advocacy organization, so we help you understand what's going on at City Council, what's going on in the legislature, and beyond. Everything they do down there is going to affect you either in your business life or your personal life, and oftentimes both. So we want to help you understand what's going on and find the best way for you to engage to help move those policymakers in the right direction.
Do you aid them in any way when you say workforce? Do you aid them in contacts with people for workforces that there's a resource for them in the industry?
We do. In fact, on our foundation side, we have a program called Elevate Ed Arizona, where we're actually embedding sort of quasi-counselors into high schools to help those students find whichever career path they want to go to, and matching them up, as you've said, with businesses to do job shadows, internships, externships, so that alignment between the business community and education is there, and it helps us all moving forward.
Any vision of the future? Are we going to see a relief in the housing crisis? Because the workforce is a big issue in building affordable housing.
It is. Affordable housing is a big issue. Obviously, you have this sort of the dynamic now between state policy and local zoning, and there needs to be a balance. Right now, the legislature and the cities haven't found that balance yet, but there's a few bills going through the legislature this year that have some hope of that. So we're hoping they could come to a solution because, as you mentioned, housing is a big issue. You got huge impact with TSMC going up north, Intel's expanding, so affordable housing, worker housing is going to be an issue that's not going away anytime soon.
Well, listen, I love the work you do. I appreciate the information. Hopefully there's businesses out there that'll reach out.
I hope they do. We're always welcome.
All right, we'll be right back. All right, coming up, Axon's plans for Scottsdale received some pushback and have halted their development. Will they continue to fight for their place in Scottsdale? We're talking with Axon CEO next. Here's a look at some upcoming events that should be on your radar. First up, Roots and Boots Queen Creek, happening March 12th to the 16th at the Horseshoe Park and Equestrian Center in Queen Creek. Tickets for each rodeo day can be purchased online. Then, it's the 42nd Annual St. Patrick's Day Parade and Fair. It's happening on Saturday, March 15th. The parade starting at 10 a.m. The parade starts at Oak and 3rd Street and will end at Margaret T. Hance Park. The fair will continue at the park until 5 p.m. Hey, welcome back. We are talking with the CEO and founder of Axon about a story that means a lot to the economy for Arizona immediately, and it has rippling effects. So thanks for doing this, Rick.
Oh, thanks for having me on.
Let's first of all talk about what happened. Axon, I'm going to lay it out. Tell me if I'm wrong. Axon went to the city council. You got improvement 7-0 in planning, 5-2 at the city council to build your world headquarters in Scottsdale. You rezone the property, get ready to break ground, and all of a sudden, they made you stop. What happened?
Yeah, well, what happened is we started noticing there were all these petitioners that were out getting people to sign a petition. That was kind of murky, but it was against, the zoning on our property because it's going from industrial to mixed use, so we can have hotel, restaurants, and apartments. Basically, we learned that what was behind this, there was a California union called Unite Here. We had a phone call with them, said, hey, why are you guys petitioning against us out in Arizona? And they basically said, well, that's not us. It's Unite. It's Worker Power, which is like their political wing. And then they said, look, we want you to sign a deal, a neutrality agreement that will allow us to unionize your place. And we said, okay, well, we'll consider that, but we like your assurance that you're going to stop petitioning against us. And they said, well, we can't do anything about that. I said, well, why would we sign this agreement? well, if you don't sign it, maybe bad things will happen. And so we found that pretty insulting. Anyways, we said, no, we're not going to sign this agreement. And so they came out in full force. And then the day they submitted all the petitions, there are some locals. There's a guy named Bob Littlefield who's been the face of this thing. And he's saying that, oh, no, there's no union involvement here. But if you look at their press release, Worker Power put out a press release basically spiking the ball. Yep, that was us. They bragged. They drove the Coyotes out of Arizona with the same tactic. They're doing this to another pro sports team now, as well as other major development deals. And this basically makes Arizona a very unfriendly place to do business because it's unpredictable. And what's happening is these unions, basically, they want to shake down every major zoning deal to force. Arizona is a right to work state where you don't have to join a union. So now they're trying to hold hostage deals to make employers agree to unionize, which I think is terrible for Arizona. But most importantly, this puts our whole project at risk. And it's not, people say, oh, it's Scottsdale residents. It was not. 2/3 of the petitioners came from out of state. 93% of the signatures were bought and paid for.
For the rest of Arizona and other industry, why would a business come here, spend the time and the money to buy the land, to get the rezoning, to do the due diligence with a city council, only to have somebody come in, get petitions signed, and have the risk of still not being able to open their business?
Yeah, business likes predictability, and that's why Florida a few years ago passed a law that solves this problem, and Texas has too. There, they consider that zoning cases are administrative, meaning you let the elected officials do their job. It's not a change in the law, it's administrative, and administrative cases don't go to referendums. So we're actually working with legislators in the state capitol that have put forth a bill that will make Arizona competitive. It'll basically say we're going to stop these shenanigans, that zoning cases would be treated as administrative. And if that bill goes through, it's very simple. That bill goes through, it saves our project and it prevents all these shakedowns in the future. And it'll tell the world that Arizona is open for business. And if we don't, then it likely drives us out of the state and makes it very hard to attract other companies.
I know you started your company, you and one other person here in Arizona. You're an Arizona guy, Chaparral High School, and you don't want to leave. So the call to action for me is, what do you want the viewers to do? What can they do to help you if they believe in your project and they believe in your plan?
They should call their state legislators, or if you live in Scottsdale, call your city councilor and say, keep Axon in Arizona. Let them know you want to. Or you can go to our website. Let me look that one up here. I think it's savearizonafuture.com. And you can get some instructions there on how to support us. But look, we're in the fight of our lives right now. This bill has been controversial. There's, a lot of people making noise. And at the end of the day, this is like, do we want Arizona to be friendly for business? Look, I'm in San Francisco as we speak. I'm having a board meeting today. And you're the first person who's going to hear this. We had a 500,000 square foot advanced manufacturing site. We were ready to sign 2 weeks ago in the East Valley in Arizona, 1,500 jobs. As of today, my board has directed we can't keep waiting. So that's gone. That's going to go out of state. Next is the headquarters. We're going to be talking about that this afternoon. I will tell you the board is very concerned. We've got politicians making, a lot of derogatory statements. It's not good for our brand. And there's a lot of concern about how much of my time is going to this. The board views this as a distraction.
Yep.
They know I'm passionate about Arizona. They think I'm being too emotional. They're like, Rick, why are you wasting so much of your time on this when you've got Florida and Texas rolling out the red carpet and tax incentives? So we got to get this solved fast. I'm fighting as hard as I can.
Rick, I appreciate the time. I wish you the best, and hopefully this is going to work out in your favor. But it's good talking to you.
Well, I'm a fighter, man. I want to get it done. We'll know in the next couple months, though, because I'm getting told it's time to wrap it up and either make a decision one way or the other.
All right, we'll be right back. Thank you to all the guests who joined us on today's show. If you missed any of the interviews or want to rewatch any of them, head over to cw7az.com/Broomhead. Now, every Sunday here on Broomhead, we ask a new poll question that we want you to participate in. The question could be about the economy, water, housing, or anything else related to Arizona. This week, the question is, do you agree with the tariffs being placed on Mexico and Canada? All you have to do is head over to cw7az.com/Broomhead to respond to the poll question. Next week, we head out to Luke Air Force Base for a behind-the-scenes look at the F-35 pilot equipment. Thanks for joining us this week on Broomhead.